just requires that there's an alternative. And the alternative is to withdraw, to not think about the things that you appreciate, to not live life in that way. There was a choice.
And again, I don't mean to be ridiculously naive about it. I realize that the spectrum of the amount of opportunity that people have across the board is huge, and many people have much, much less. And so I think maybe if I were in a different circumstance, I wouldn't have this view of life.
Well, look, I have been thinking about this question ever since we got it. I thought about what these people said on Twitter. I was thinking about these three top answers: children, marriage, and then purpose. And I was thinking about Viktor Frankl as well, the great existential psychotherapist who wrote Man's Search for Meaning. But I was actually recently reading a book by Bill Damon, who's a colleague and a friend at Stanford who works on purpose. And he points out in this new book that he's written about his life that the original title of Man's Search for Meaning was supposed to be Nevertheless, Say Yes to Life. And the publisher decided that Man's Search for Meaning sounded better or whatever, like would sell better. And the idea that Frankl had as a clinical therapist who saw people in practice as a survivor of 4 different concentration camps was that there are things that you can't control. By the way, my sister is a reproductive endocrinologist, and she will tell you that not everybody can choose to have children. It's not just a choice. There are factors beyond your control. Many, many, many people would love to have a wonderful marriage but can't yet find the mate, and so that's not entirely in your control. And many people would want to have a calling for their work and would love to have a positive impact on humanity but can't figure that quite out either. I think the core of Frankl's philosophy and what he attributes surviving through the death camps and thriving afterwards as a clinician, and what he would try to teach his patients in his clinical practice, was that there are things in life that you cannot control. He could not control that the Nazis decided to have death camps in the first place. You may not be able to control the factors that are going to influence your fertility or your meeting of a soulmate or not. But nevertheless, there's always a choice that you can make. Nevertheless, there is some freedom of the will over your response to your situation. And I think actually that's the through line of these Twitter responses. There's an element of autonomy, and in all these things there's an element that you can't control. But I think, to me, and I hope this isn't just a clever and cute answer to the question of what is the most significant choice that you can make, it's just to realize that you have choices, right? To live your life realizing that things are not totally outside of your control, but there is always your autonomy over how you react.
Such a good answer. I am curious if there's data and literature on things like mate choice and lifetime happiness or satisfaction, or choice of having and not having children on lifetime happiness and satisfaction.
So there is a contentious literature on whether parenting makes you happy or not happy. And by the way, that doesn't necessarily mean you should and shouldn't have them. But one point of view from Sonia Lyubomirsky and her colleagues is that her empirical data suggests that parenting can be not great for happiness, at least that it can lead to stress, and that there is less well-being in some cases. On the other hand, even in the same data sets, I believe, there's evidence that other dimensions of happiness, maybe not like, oh yay, today was a great day, it was really easy too, but more like meaning. It's often called eudaimonic well-being. Again, it's a contentious literature, but there's some evidence that the relationship between parenting and subjective well-being or happiness is complex, because even though parenting is hard and it creates a lot of negative emotion, it also can be the source of greatest satisfaction at the same time, and by the way, positive emotions. It's complicated.
It is complicated, although there's also parallels to anything that's difficult in life, right? If you accomplish something that was very, very, very challenging or difficult, that's what satisfaction really is. It's not about winning at something that's easy. It's not about winning the rigged game.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue that there's nothing harder than parenting, and some would argue there's nothing more gratifying. It's not necessarily the same thing as enjoyable.
What does the data say on marriage and people's lifetime either satisfaction or happiness about that? That must be a complicated thing to untangle, honestly.
Both children and marriage, pretty hard to randomly assign people to experimental condition. I think that is why both of those literatures are fraught, and I don't think the conclusions are necessarily clear or consensual. But with marriage, there's some correlational data suggesting that maybe people who are married are on average a little happier, but the problem is, like, why? And that doesn't mean marriage makes you happy. Maybe being happier makes you more inclined to get married. It's not simple, because every possible causal story and just a countless number of third variables, as they're called, have to be at play. I will say this, though: if the story on parenting and also on marriage is complex and we're not sure there's a straightforward, like, yep, it makes you happy or it doesn't, I will say with purpose, it's a lot clearer.
Makes you miserable having purpose, doesn't it?
No, Stephen. It is a pretty amazingly positive, again, correlation, because you can't really assign people to have purposeful lives either, but the correlation between feeling like you have what Frankl might say, well, he called his therapeutic philosophy logotherapy, logo meaning meaning, but people who tend to feel like they have a sense of meaning and purpose in their life are much happier, and that's not at all contested.
That makes a lot of sense. I will say, on the marriage front, you're married to Jason, I'm married to Ellen, and you and I, we're both happy as crap. That's an N of 2. I think that proves it. Science wins.
Yes, +1 for science. But anyway, I don't think the question that Colin is asking here is exactly the same question, though, as happiness.
I think that's a good point. So, right, if we were to go back to Colin's original question, I would say to Colin and to you that if the question is what is the most significant or powerful choice in your life you can make, I do think that we have ignored one obvious correct answer here, which is the single most significant or powerful choice any of us will ever make is when to end your podcast episode.
And the answer is right now.
No Stupid Questions is part of the Freakonomics Radio Network, which also includes Freakonomics Radio, People I Mostly Admire, and Sudhir Breaks the Internet. This episode was produced by me, Rebecca Lee Douglas, and now here's a fact check of today's conversations. Stephen tells Angela about a 2005 New York Times piece that he co-authored with Steve Levitt about canine DNA sampling as a possible solution to the city's dog poop problems. A dream that actually manifested through the wonders of modern technology. Not in Philadelphia, unfortunately, but in other areas around the globe. As Stephen suggested, Petah Tikva Israel did experiment with the dog DNA pilot program. In fact, the initiative not only helped to identify people who did not pick up their dog's poop, but also rewarded the owners who deposited the feces in appropriate receptacles with free bags of dog poop. The program inspired the city of Jerusalem to launch a similar project years later. Municipalities aren't the only places experimenting with these initiatives. The idea has also launched a new commercial industry. According to their website, Blueprints, a company founded in 2008 in Knoxville, Tennessee, offers DNA profiling of dog feces to over 5,000 communities in the United States, Canada,